Oh boy, this is arguably the best piece of drama to come out of this entire Brady Tkachuk American Exodus trade situation in the NHL. I wanted to focus our attention on Pittsburgh Penguins defenseman Kris Letang, a guy who is already 39 years old and who was on the last 2 years of a $6.1 million AAV contract. Letang is a beast. Maybe he is not good now compared to what he once was. I'd say 34 points in 74 games is definitely serviceable at the National Hockey League level. Is he the same Norris-nominated defenseman that he once was? Probably not. But Kris Letang, ever since 2007, has been a super consistent presence on the Penguins' blue line, winning multiple Stanley Cups and making the second All-Star team twice in his career. Letang, for all intents and purposes, is a stud. And Kris Letang went out there and interacted on an Instagram post that throws some massive shade on some of these American dudes that we have seen over the past few years, either asking out, getting traded, and being a part of that Olympic team that everybody loves talking about. Take a look at this tweet made by Gabby. Kris Letang liking this photo has me dead. It's a post made by Hockey Forever on Instagram that showcases some championship-building hockey players and some championship-chasing hockey players. Hockey Forever says some players stay loyal for years, and then I guess we could go to the post itself to find more info, but you could see Kris Letang. Kletang_58 did indeed like this image. And I think, I'm not going to necessarily put words in Letang's mouth here, but I do feel like there is an element of, hey, these guys at the bottom, they're impatient. They're unwilling to go through the tough times. They want that success right away, as soon as possible. And I'm not saying that Kris Letang is directly using those words to describe these guys and think about these guys, but come on, we're in the social media age. Liking stuff means endorsing that stuff. You can't just be liking it for the memes, especially when it directly involves people that you've either had contact with or that you work with professionally. Let's pull up the actual post made by Hockey Forever on the gram. Some players stay loyal for years and eventually get rewarded. Others decide life is too short and go looking for a better opportunity. Is jumping ship to a contender taking the easy way out or just refusing to waste your prime? Top comment here says, notice how all the chasers are American. Now we will get into that, but first let's just dive into the image itself. On championship builders, you have Victor Hedman, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, Steven Stamkos, and Cale Makar, all of whom are superstars who have won at least one Stanley Cup. Crosby has 3, the Lightning guys have 2, Colorado, Cale Makar, they've got 1, so does Ovechkin, he's got 1 as well. Interesting thing about almost all of these guys, they really dragged it out before getting any sustained level of success. Now, you can say that varies from person to person. Alex Ovechkin, for example, this guy was in the NHL for a decade plus before winning the Stanley Cup in 2018. It took him so long, with playoff runs, some disappointing, others short. He just didn't get it done. And there was a lot of controversy on whether or not Ovechkin would have been able to get a Stanley Cup in the 2010s. He finally did it. Congrats. He paid his dues. It worked. Sidney Crosby, on the other hand, yeah, he was drafted in 2005, and the Pittsburgh Penguins immediately started contending and making Stanley Cup Finals with Crosby in the mix. They made it once in 2008, and they lost. Then they made it the next year, and then they won. So Sid the Kid still had to go through some growing pains there, but that did include Stanley Cup Finals experience. Cale Makar's a little different, because by the time he debuted with the Colorado Avalanche, the team was already good. His first taste of NHL hockey was in the playoffs in 2019. And we all know the story from there. Just a few years later, the Colorado Avalanche end up winning the Stanley Cup, and Cale Makar walks away with the Conn Smythe Trophy I'd say he's a pretty good fit for what Colorado's got going on. Victor Hedman, though, is an interesting story. Second overall draft pick in 2009 by Tampa. He ends up making the Tampa Bay Lightning right away, but the Lightning aren't amazing right off the bat. Yes, it's true, they do have themselves some runs here and there. They made the third round in 2011, got one game within making the Stanley Cup Finals. They then made the Stanley Cup Finals in 2015. But it wasn't until a little bit after that that the Tampa Bay Lightning started totally dominating. After getting embarrassed by Columbus in the first round in 2019, that's when everything shifted and they started making back-to-back-to-back finalses. Everything has fallen apart since then, but I think 2 Stanley Cups and even more Stanley Cup Finals appearances for Hedman, that's pretty good antidote in that respect. However, when you look at the guys on the bottom, championship chasers, Noah Hanifin, Calgary Flames guy, initially a Carolina Hurricanes guy, but he spent a good chunk of his career with the Flames in the Adam Fox trade. That's what it was. Oh yeah, that was a long time ago. But Hanifin got traded to Calgary, didn't really have that much success there. Matthew Tkachuk, you could say the same thing, ended up getting traded to Florida. Brady Tkachuk, Dylan Larkin, Quinn Hughes, all of these guys on teams that are either on the cusp of doing some interesting things like Ottawa, or just total bottom feeders like Detroit and Vancouver. Guys that demanded out because they wanted more for themselves in the moment. Now, I will say, there is an argument to be made that at least one of those championship chasers didn't really chase a championship per se, in the same way that you can say Hanifin did by going to Vegas, in the same way that Quinn Hughes did when he demanded out of Vancouver, and in the same way that Brady Tkachuk is when getting traded to Florida. It's Brady's brother Matthew. You can go out there and say this. I don't think giving Matthew that label is fair. He asked for a trade from Calgary and got traded to the President's Trophy team. But that team wasn't full of his American friends, and it wasn't an established, consistent postseason contender at the time. Which I actually would agree with. Matthew Tkachuk was a 100-point NHL superstar that got traded to Florida. His first season there, he upped his point production and made the Stanley Cup Finals, losing to the Vegas Golden Knights before making the Finals again the next 2 seasons and winning then. Matthew Tkachuk is arguably like the easiest example of a guy that helped shape the way the Florida Panthers were able to contend and be in the mix every single year. They didn't necessarily have that before he got traded over there. So I will at least say that Matthew Tkachuk, even though he does fit into that American archetype of guys that want out of their teams because they're not great, Matthew Tkachuk, in a way, pioneered this for being an option for these NHL players. Noah Hanifin, it's kind of funny because he went over to Vegas and they actually beat Matthew Tkachuk in the finals there. But Vegas was already a powerhouse team. You saw Jack Eichel get traded over there, Mark Stone, Tomas Hertl, Max Pacioretty. They always get good guys. It's kind of ridiculous how Vegas seems to always get away with it. But then you have the other two on the bottom here, Larkin and Quinn Hughes. Yeah, D-Boss is part of a bad team. Quinn Hughes, part of a bad team. Brady Tkachuk, you can say, not part of a bad team, part of a pretty good team if they had goaltending. But Brady, after putting up donuts in the Stanley Cup Playoffs in the first round versus Carolina, caps off what was a mostly playoff-less run with the Ottawa Senators, with a very disappointing finale and an even more disappointing end-of-season press conference and podcast episode. So, with all that said, seeing a guy like Kris Letang go out there and interact with a post essentially calling some of these guys championship chasers, I do think there was some shade thrown here. Maybe not intentionally. It's Instagram after all. People aren't really thinking too hard when they're scrolling through, seeing what pops up, double tapping and moving on. I doubt Kris Letang's even going out there and taking the time to fully think about the posts like this. But did he just throw some massive shade on Brady Tkachuk, Quinn Hughes, Dylan Larkin, and others? Maybe it's easier for him to like it because his old buddy Sidney Crosby is in the championship builders section of the article, but I digress. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Kris Letang going out there and liking this Instagram post, calling Brady, Matthew Tkachuk, Noah Hanifin, Dylan Larkin, and Quinn Hughes championship chasers? I hope you enjoyed this Vidashashral sign on, and bye.